meeting and call it to order. July 14, Bastille Day. Sharon, will you please take the roll?
Councilmember Alves,
Here.
Councilmember Wernikoff,
Here.
Councilmember Richards, Vice Mayor Hughes, Mayor Derwin.
Here. Thanks, Sharon. Oral communications. This is the portion of the evening when anyone in the public may speak on any subject they wish, as long as it is not on the agenda, knowing that we cannot take action or have an extended conversation. Sharon, are there any hands up for oral communications?
Yes, we have one hand up. Bob Turcott.
Hi, thank you. I have a request and also a follow-up comment. I do my best to be professional and civil with people whose views are very different from mine. I try to interact as if we're on the same team because in fact we are. I found that this approach is productive and invariably I learn something important and I understand better the perspective of the other person. I do my best to avoid impugning the motives of others or striking a strident or snarky tone. I don't always succeed because in fact, this is actually my default way of interacting with the world, but I work at it and I think I'm improving. I try to avoid moral indignation and instead focus on facts and logic. I've been on the receiving end more than once of broad nebulous claims that I'm mistaken or I have the facts wrong or I'm spreading misinformation or I was misinformed. I'd like to ask, instead of these broad, non-specific, dismissive characterizations, as a courtesy, simply state specifically and concretely where you think the error lies and present the facts as you see them. On another topic, as follow-up, at the last town council meeting, one of the council members noted that home hardening via Chapter 7A of the California Building Code has been required for all new residential construction for some time within Portola Valley, regardless of the degree of hazard in the area. I think this was a brilliant move and should be applauded. It's analogous to universal precautions in medicine. Simply apply the same precautions everywhere and don't presume to have the sophistication or knowledge to be able to tease out where it's not actually needed. Home hardening, along with vegetation management, are critically important, but they're not enough. CAL FIRE analysis shows that Chapter 7A building standards reduce the probability of home destruction and wildfire, but it doesn't reduce the probability to zero. In fact, it only decreases by 40%. So if 100 unhardened homes that were destroyed in a wildfire had used Chapter 7A standards, according to CAL FIRE analysis, 40 of them would have survived, but 60 of them would have been destroyed. So while home hardening and vegetation management are important, we need to use every tool in the toolbox. We need to use modern standards in high hazard areas. We need to require sprinklering, use the structure separation NFPA standards called for in WUI rural and suburban areas. We need to do site-specific hazard and risk assessment and employ mitigating measures. We need to understand our evacuation capacity and how new construction will impact it. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon, are there other hands up?
Hi, Jonathan Warnes from West Bay Sanitary District.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for your time. Just wanted to provide an update. The district's not entertaining new reimbursement agreements at this time as we explore other options that will make sewer more accessible to people with less of a financial hurdle to go over and being less of a burden on the district to manage. But of course, we're going to honor the agreements that we already have. And then this second thing was we're also exploring annexing certain portions of the town in order to streamline the process, which again would make it easier for people to connect to sewer. And obviously we'd want to include the town in these discussions. So we're hoping to have something to report to you guys on August 11th at your next meeting. And then the third thing was that the district's interested in having monthly meetings with the town. This is something that we do with the city of Menlo Park, and it's very helpful for both agencies. So nothing really to report, just to provide an update. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there others? Karen Askey. Karen, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Now I can, yes.
Hi. Oh, I've unmuted several times. Getting new to the system here. Like Bob, I am very concerned about the fire safety in Portola Valley, and I know you all feel the same way. And I'm very much in line with Bob's comments, and I'm concerned that we need to really take the time and be thoughtful about how we address all of these safety issues before we move forward with some of our planning. There's been concern about if we should withdraw item 7 on the agenda from the consent agenda until the comments from the fire marshal can be heard and publicly aired and fully addressed. And we really want to know what impact the state's ADU mandates would have in Portola Valley with respect to the higher, very high very high hazard fire severity zones. So I'm just requesting that we really take the time to truly understand that, and also let the residents know and understand all the reasoning behind things. Thank you.
Thanks. Are there other people who wish to speak? Is there another hand? Christy?
Hi, thank you for listening to me tonight. I am wondering if the town council will be taking a stand on, excuse me, SB 9 and SB 10. SB 10 is the single family neighborhoods are at target of SB 10. 14 units can be allowed on all single family lots in neighborhoods. There's no environmental protection, no infrastructure improvements required, no fire zone restrictions, no community input allowed, a massive state disregard for the democratic process. I'm also wondering if the town council is going to take up action or opinion on SB 9. SB 9 destroys neighborhoods, displaces families, decreases affordability. It lets developers build 4 to 6 units of dense housing where one home now sits, not one of them affordable. Spectators will bid against and displace families, especially in well-located, diverse neighborhoods. In a sweeping attack on the environment, SB 9 dismantles the existing environmental protections and lets developers destroy yards, bulldoze trees, encourages dense construction uneven in severe fire zones. So I'm wondering if our town council is taking any action on SB 9 and SB 10 in the assembly and writing assembly members and making sure that you know how constituents and residents feel in Portola Valley on these two issues. I'm also, number 3, wondering if we've hired a legislative analyst, and if so, if the public could know the name, when the person started, and the reports from this person on a regular basis. And I would like an answer on that, number 3. Actually, 1, 2, and 3, if you can give me answers. I think the public deserves it. Thank you.
I'm not going to answer 1 or 2. If Jeremy would like to answer number 3.
Sure, sorry, I was muted there. The town does not have, does not have a lobbyist. The town does engage with Cruz and Associates for information about bills and the budget, but we do not employ them as a lobbyist. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, I see another hand, Claire Jernick.
Hi, it's Mary. I'm at Claire's. I'm just commenting on Christie's comment. It was of interest to me that just her mentioning this at the Woodside Town Council, she mentioned the 9 and 10, and they immediately got a unanimous consensus among their town council to write letters to support resistance against 9 and 10. And I just wondered why we are so different in that regard, and why we're not really considering making some statements about the dangers we face seismically and fire-wise. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other? I don't see. And Sharon, do you see any more hands? I do
No,
not.
there are no other hands raised.
Okay, great. Okay, then we'll move on to consent agenda. The members of the public may comment on any item on the consent agenda. You may speak for up to 3 minutes. We will listen to you. However, only the council can pull items on the consent agenda. Would anyone like to speak to an item on the consent agenda?
Bob Turcott.
Thank you. I'd like to ask that item 7 be removed from the consent agenda. The legislature has made clear that local municipalities have not only the prerogative, but more importantly, the responsibility to exclude areas as needed for public safety from the state ADU mandate. At each of the 3 planning commission meetings and the town council meeting where this proposal was discussed, I pointed out that high hazard areas in Portola Valley are not limited to the approximately 10% of its land addressed by Portola Valley's quote ADU restricted area, unquote. Rather, as documented by CAL FIRE, Woodside Fire Protection District, and Moritz Consulting, it includes an additional 50% at least of Portola Valley area. You heard my opinion about the ramifications of this proposal, but neither council members nor planning commissioners nor the public had the benefit of any public testimony from the fire protection professionals about the benefits or consequences of unsprinklered construction in these high hazard areas, or lack of minimum structure separation, or potential impact on evacuation capacity, or lack of site-specific hazard and risk assessment and implementation of mitigating measures, all of which are standards of the National Fire Protection Association. This proposal will allow significant compromises to modern safe building practices. Chief Lidner attended at least 3 planning commission meetings and shared his expertise on topics such as number of parking places and whether the remains of a redwood tree could serve as a table for the fire crew. Why aren't the decisions of the planning commission and town council similarly informed by the public testimony of fire protection professionals such as our fire marshal or CAL FIRE or a representative from the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety? I fear that the town council's decision not to appeal our RENA number and a wrong decision on this issue will haunt it. More importantly, I fear that it will haunt my family and my fellow residents. Please remove the item from the consent agenda and send it back to the Planning Commission so they, you, and we can all benefit from the public testimony of fire professionals regarding these critical life safety issues. Thank you.
Thanks. There is another hand up. Yeah, I see a couple.
Liz Babb.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sure can.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Liz Babb, and I am a proud resident of the Woodside Highlands District in Portola Valley. I would like to request also, just like Bob, that item 7 on the agenda, consent agenda be withdrawn and move back to the Planning Commission so that we can have public comments during that part of the meeting or during a meeting on this ordinance. So I am a longtime resident of the San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up in Atherton. I went to high school in Palo Alto. I then lived in San Francisco for 25 years. And I recently moved down here about 4 years ago. And my parents have also moved from Atherton to Portola Valley. So a big fat family here. Parents live at the Sequoias. And I have a personal experience with house fire. In 2008, while I was living in San Francisco, I lost my home to a fire. My beautiful home was a 1902 historical home on the wall of the Presidio, one of those shingled ones. and it burned down due to an electrical fire. Luckily, nobody was hurt, and we were the only house on the street that was affected. But that's the thing. It actually turned out to be a big silver lining that we were the only ones, because we were able to get the attention and the resources that we needed from our insurance company to rebuild. Now I'm in the Woodside Highlands, which, as you know, is designated as a very high fire hazard zone. And I am terrified of being in a situation where evacuation is difficult and my home goes up in smoke again. And I really feel this ordinance needs to be looked at again. And I would love to listen to some public testimony from the fire experts and the fire marshal about these different fire hazards and mitigations related to things like sprinklers and building separation, density. I mean, in my opinion, in reality, the designation to very high fire hazard zone versus high fire versus medium fire is very narrow margin. And in my opinion, we have got to protect all zones from fire because it can jump so easily and so quickly. It doesn't pay attention to the zone designations. And then fast forward to January 2021, that insurance company that I had been working with for 25 years and who did help me rebuild my home in San Francisco, well, they dropped me like a hot potato, and they will no longer write my homeowner's insurance due to fire hazard. So now I am in that large group of people in the California Last Resort Fire Insurance Plan. And I know if there is a group of us where homes go up in smoke, it's going to be really difficult to get any attention at all. Hopefully we'll all be alive at the same time and rebuild. So those are just some of the personal reasons coming from my experience that have motivated me to attend tonight and request that item 7 be removed from the consent agenda so that we can get some public testimony from the fire experts on these issues with this ordinance. So thank you, and I look forward to getting more engaged with town governance.
Thank you, Liz, and welcome to our community.
Thank you.
Is there Karen asked?
Karen asking.
Yeah, well, as you can see, I put the cart before the horse. And what I said earlier was obviously supposed to go now, so mea culpa, but I just want to reiterate how much I agree with Bob and Liz, and that we do need to air this publicly and bring this issue to the top of the table. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you see any more?
Oh, one more.
Wait, one more popped up. Oh,
Christy
two.
Day.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon. I keep my remarks very brief because I think Bob and Liz and Karen have said what needs to be said. The only thing I would add is that about a year and a half ago, when the pandemic struck here, the town council had made no hesitation whatsoever closing our town hall to protect the safety of our town employees from a contagious pandemic. Wildfire is no less contagious and it's no less deadly. And you need to take it no less seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. And Teresa Godfrey.
Hi, I just have a few minor things to add. I think everybody else has pointed out the importance of getting additional information and input from the fire department. I think fire safety is paramount to me and to my community. That's Woodside Highlands. And as Liz clearly pointed out, we're having difficulty getting fire insurance right now. And I think this is a very big issue for our town. We've asked Jeremy in the past to help us in some instances to see at least what the extent of the problem is, but I suspect it's going to get worse as building becomes even more and more apparent. And I don't know how these homes are going to get fire insurance, or if they're going to get fire insurance, except through the state program. I think this is an important aspect to flush out before we move ahead too rapidly on reviewing these plans. So thank you. That's kind of what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I lost my insurance twice in 1 year, just for the record. Is there anybody else?
There are no additional hands raised.
Okay, I will bring it back to the council. Would anyone like to pull an item on the consent agenda? Are you
No.
trying to speak, Jeff? No. Sarah?
No.
No.
I will move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second.
I wanted to ask one question.
Sorry.
Good.
To Jeremy, excuse me. Jeremy, did the fire marshal comment on the ADU ordinance, the updated ordinance?
Yes, Fire Marshal Bullard was intimately involved in reviewing, and also Chief Lindner, reviewing the ADU ordinance with staff on multiple occasions. Has participated in discussions with both me, but in particular, the planning and building director, Laura Russell. They both have informed an upcoming fire checklist that will be on the Planning Commission's agenda in a couple weeks that supports what the Planning Commission directed staff to do, which was to A, move this ordinance forward to the council, and B, create a checklist that provided very stringent restrictions on ADUs per fire danger that were built in the setback. So we're excited to bring that forward to you. Frankly, we think it's probably among the most restrictive fire safety elements that you could bring forward on a construction project as it's been developed. And they were informed additionally by the work that that our Wildfire Preparedness Committee, and then the knowledge of the fire marshal. So just for the record, I think it's important to note that while the fire marshal didn't participate in the final discussions at the Planning Commission, the ASCC, which is entirely normal when it comes to matters that are of this ilk, he was very much involved. And having talked to him earlier today about some of the comments made on the forum, he asked me directly to help correct that record. So I'm happy to do that for him. He was unable to do it himself. Thank you.
And am I remembering correctly? I thought that ADUs were I don't know, prohibited, restricted, whatever, up in the Highlands. Am I dreaming?
No, you're not dreaming. That is correct. The ADU ordinance that the town previously enacted and approved had significant restrictions on ADU, the construction of ADUs in the Woodside in the Woodside Highlands, primarily due to the lack of evacuation zones. It happens to also overlap with the very high fire severity zone designation as well. The ordinance as it's proposed, and certainly would defer to my colleague Scar Silver, the town attorney, and Laura Russell, the planning and building director. There would appear to be very few opportunities for those ADUs to be constructed given the topography of the town and the like. I think our estimate was perhaps 1 or 2 a year at the max. The fire checklist may ultimately dissuade any additional units from being constructed from that number, simply because people may not want to do what the checklist is going to require. But we'll preview that with the Planning Commission in a couple weeks. I don't know, Cara or Laura, if you want to say anything additionally on this matter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to add one thing primarily for the members of the public who were not at your last meeting. One of the reasons why staff is bringing forward this ordinance at this stage is to allow for the town to adopt more restrictive, stringent fire safety requirements. If this ordinance were not passed, or if the council decided not to adopt it at this particular juncture, the state law would go into effect, and the town would be governed by the default standards under state law, which do not allow for any regulation of setbacks whatsoever, regardless of fire safety. So that is the reason why this ordinance it has been so important to town staff in bringing forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Cara. All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we had discussion. Sharon, roll call.
Councilmember Alves,
Yes.
Councilmember Warnickoff, Mayor Derwin.
Sorry.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. I know a lot of people are disappointed, but I think we trust the planning commission, we trust our attorney, we trust the fire department, we trust our planning staff. Thank you. Moving on to the regular agenda, item number 9 is a recommendation by the town manager, first reading of an ordinance with amendments to the noise ordinance.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor and members of the council. This is an item that actually came out of discussions that I personally had with those who provide for sporting opportunities in town on the town's fields, and B, those who are at our schools. And under the current noise ordinance, there are restrictions related to both amplified sound and to the use of music, and it's a very broad prohibition. Both the schools and our friends in particularly the Little League have used both in the past. That's been something that's happened for many years, and this was an opportunity to put into an ordinance something that has been the practice for some time. As written, it's very restrictive for the schools. It's related to graduation ceremonies, and for sports, and this would just be Little League Soccer does not utilize and does not intend to utilize amplified sound or music for opening day and championship games, which is really just 2 weekends. That concludes my report.
Are there questions from council members? No, I see heads saying no. All right. Are there comments from the public?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, I will bring it back to the council. Do you want to discuss it? Would you like to make a motion? Jeff?
I'll just thank Jeremy. He worked particularly with Todd Scheuer at the Little League. There's a handful of there's 3 times a year where it's sort of nice to be able to announce things to the crowd that's watching a game. And so we thought this was a reasonable, very rare disturbance. The noise does kind of carry up the hill, recognize that, but we thought it was reasonable to let them have a few days with this. So we thought this was a reasonable compromise, and I believe Little League was happy with it too. So with that, I will move approval of this item.
And waive further reading. Introduce and waive
Yes.
further reading.
Thank you. Yes.
Second.
Yes, I second.
Okay, so this is happy noise exceptions to the noise ordinance. Sharon, roll call, please.
Councilmember Alves,
Yes.
Councilmember Warnickoff,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Passes. The next item is item number 10. This is a recommendation by the town manager, appointment of subcommittee for ABAG, HCD, RENA engagement on wildfire issues. Alphabet soup. Jeremy, are you gonna handle this?
It's me. Yeah, quite a mouthful. I'm sorry for that. When I wrote it, I couldn't believe what I had written myself. The town has a great opportunity to engage with ABAG and HCD and others as needed on issues related to housing and wildfire danger. The town continues to be a leader as it relates to finding ways to bring resiliency and mitigation to this community. That started many years ago. I think earlier comment from Bob mentioned this Chapter 7A, and that's continued to this day. We're excited that in the coming months, there will be another home hardening code that we understand to be fairly restrictive, more restrictive than most codes in the nation, and a variety of other measures that we think do bring that level of resiliency. However, there does remain a significant long-term question about the intersection of these two issues. And the council did write a letter, ask council members, Richard, and at the time council member Hughes, who's now the vice mayor, to write a letter asking questions about these very topics. So in many ways, what we're recommending here is an opportunity to refresh that subcommittee that didn't have this exact charge at that time to continue with that engagement. Now it's outside the housing element process. We think that that is appropriate given what council direction has been in the past. Staff, as you can imagine, continues to have engagement with staffs at HCD and ABAG. I have personally had a great opportunity to speak to a Bay Area elected representative who served both on the RENA allotment board and is serving on the appeals board about the process by which the town's numbers were developed, and very comfortable with what we have publicly stated about how those numbers are designed and developed. So this is certainly a longer term engagement, but we think that we're learning so much about what communities can do to create resiliency and what opportunities there might be to think differently about this. On red page 1, I didn't write it in here, but I do have an additional recommendation that, and this is what happens when you don't come to a council meeting, that Vice Mayor Hughes and Councilmember Richards serve in this capacity, given that they've done this in the past, have a very good understanding of the issues involved and have been heavily involved in both wildfire and housing issues generally. Happy to answer any questions.
Great. Questions from the council? I have a question, Jeremy. Will they also be talking to the insurance commissioner? I think it's important to note that you, through your connections, put together a meeting with the insurance commissioner, and I think we also invited Woodside, and who else was it? Atherton?
Hillsborough was there as well.
Hillsborough, right.
Yeah.
Are they going to also continue with that relationship?
I think that's inherent in the charge. I think also that there's a subcommittee that Jeff serves on the Wildfire Preparedness Committee that's involved in insurance issues and has made recommendations through that committee. So where there's intersection and there's no Brown Act problems, we'll continue with the parallel tracks. I think that's entirely appropriate. That meeting, thank you for bringing that up. That meeting that was very thoughtful. It took a lot of doing to virtually bring the insurance commissioner to us and have that engagement and share with other cities who have the same set of issues in front of them what his current thinking is, how he can be helpful. Without peeling back the onion too much here, we will have more to announce as it relates to further, in this case, public interactions with the insurance commissioner in the late summer here in town. So stay tuned on that front. But to your point, I think that that's completely appropriate. And really the charge is any engagement with those entities that have responsibility around these issues, and that would include our assembly member in State Senator.
Sure. Okay. Are there questions from the public?
There's, yes, one hand raised. Bob Turcott.
For you, is this time for questions or comments?
Well, you can comment or question.
Okay, you said, I actually have some comments. I have some comments. So I fear that my earlier comments about the Chapter 7A home hardening were completely missed. There's right now, there is a ADU being constructed in the chimney of a canyon. No requirement for sprinklers, no requirement for building separation, 50 feet from evacuation route, while other houses nearby are 100 to 150 feet away from the road. Canyons make their own fire, make their own wind. They become wind machines. And so that ADU will have a very significant wind directed at it, full of embers, hot air. If it catches, God forbid, it will be in a blast furnace. There is no way that this town is leading in wildfire resiliency. There is no way in any sense that that's true. The proposal you just approved will formalize the same process that allowed this ADU to be constructed. That said, I applaud the engagement with ABEG. After the comment I just made, you may not take me up on this offer, but I would very sincerely like to help. If there's a way for me to, please tap me. The interaction with ABEG that has happened in the past, I applaud that as well. I wonder why a deeper interaction didn't happen. Why was it that I, not the town staff, discovered that our extensive fire hazard area had no influence on our RENA number? Why was it that I, not the staff, demonstrated that high fire hazard communities are excessively burdened by this methodology? So my questions are, why did we not engage sooner? Why does this strategy, how does this benefit residents as opposed to appealing the RENA number? And then finally, one of the items that was listed in the staff report, whether future housing built in areas affected by wildfire should be constructed at new home hardening standards. That was one of the suggested items for engagement. My suggestion is talk with fire protection professionals, not ABEG, about issues such as that. Thank you.
Jeremy, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. And I'd like to make some comments if I could.
Absolutely.
And I think Cara will have something to say here as well. First, I'd like to say for the record that state law does not allow ADUs to be sprinklered if the existing house wasn't sprinklered. So it's not an opportunity to do so. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear. Secondly, engagement has been going on off and on for years on a variety of issues. I actually serve on a committee of peers talking about wildfire issues and housing to the extent that ABAG is entertaining those types of conversations. And I've had a great opportunity that I've shared with council to share the things that we're doing here. And I think Cara may have some comments as it relates to what was just said around the discovery of the number of units, but having spoken directly to those who helped create the number of units that were allocated and the appeal process, I can only say that that what was just mentioned was incorrect. There's been attempts to share that information. Those opportunities haven't been made available. So, Cara, would you please?
Sure. So the ABAG methodology is a very complex methodology. Staff has had many conversations with ABAG about the methodology itself. The council has submitted a letter regarding the methodology. The council has been involved in a working group called 21 Elements that has looked at the methodology in detail, and it's very clear that there are some issues associated with fire safety that are factored into the methodology that the town disagrees with. We've had conversations with ABAG about that particular approach, and I find it interesting that Mr. Turcotte thinks that these issues were brought to the town's attention by him. We typically don't consult with individual residents regarding our own due diligence in terms of the methodology, in terms of communicating with other agencies, and that's done at a staff level very routinely. So the council obviously is aware of this, and I just wanted to
I think it's also important to note that through the chair, I think it's also important to note that you know, we're aware that the numbers, at least prior to their publication in draft form, were higher. They were reduced by a not insignificant amount due to a variety of factors, including what I understand to be wildfire concerns. Also, there were some reductions, I believe, related to access to public transit. There are 5 statutory requirements that ABAG must utilize as it relates to the allocation of numbers, which include fair housing. One of the, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe one of those includes fire. But there's a variety of interlaced factors and inputs that go into the development of the numbers. And I think Cara said it very well, that staff has done an excellent job doing due diligence, and we're very happy to correct the record tonight. Thanks.
I want to respond to this. With all due respect, Mr. Turcott, you came on the scene pretty late. I've been on the council for 16 years. Since 2011 or 12, when the council thought about building some affordable housing at what was Al's Nursery and is now the nursery school, I was very involved. As a result of my advocacy there, that election in 2013 was contested because people tried to get rid of me and they couldn't budge me. I have been working in the trenches on housing since then. I was on the regional committee. It was a giant group of 50 people. That's where I admitted that I spoke with someone at the meeting sitting across from me who was very high up in real estate at Stanford. When we were asked, find creative ways to build housing in your towns and cities. And I said, do you have any plans to develop on the wedge? And from that, it became Mary Ann is solely responsible for the Stanford project, which actually I find really flattering right now because they have about $1 billion portfolio. So that means I'm pretty flippin' hot if I can influence that. From that huge regional meeting of stakeholders came together to try to close the housing jobs gap. Home for All came out of that. We came together and did a housing strategic plan. We talked to all our partners, Stanford, Sequoias, the school district, Priory. Am I leaving anything out, Jeremy? Do you have any plans to build housing? And I, as a result of my intense involvement, I know all the decision makers. I know the person Jeremy's talking about who was on the methodology committee and is on the RENA appeals board for the 9 counties. I talked to him extensively about our case. I showed him your letter and I said, what do you think? He goes, well, submit it. I said, what'll happen? Nothing. He said, there's no way. There's no way. Because unless you can tell me that there is zero square footage in Portola Valley that you can build on because of fire danger, there is a way. You can build on the commercial corridor. You can rezone. So I'm actually kind of offended here that you're coming in telling us, you guys don't know what you're doing. I have taken arrows on the back for this for a lot of years. Would anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Do we need to, yeah, we need a motion to appoint Craig and John to the subcommittee.
I'd like to make a motion, and as I'm doing it, I just want to make a comment, that I think that this subcommittee is super important, and I think it allows us as a town to have a parallel process to be focused on the things that we're most concerned about fire. I continue to think that appealing would have been a waste of time. We need to work productively and smartly and collaboratively, not frivolously spending time on an appeal that's not going to be fruitful in the end. And I think having this committee enables us to kind of focus on the things that we're most concerned about related to housing, and that is fire. So I'm very happy that we're doing this and would make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Second.
I will second, and I'll just comment, there is an uncomfortable truth at the bottom of this, which is that we have 2 conflicting mandates in front of us. One is to provide more housing. The other is to protect our residents against fire. There are ways to resolve them. It's complicated. I think there probably has to be a deeper conversation at a higher level than us about how you resolve those. And you know, these conversations we're having. I mean, when I asked Insurance Commissioner Lara in May directly, I said we're being asked to plan for housing that might not be insurable, and he was very he was. I was preaching to the choir on this. He was very aware of this. This is an issue that is going to come up. The RENA situation is not the RENA number is unfortunately not the venue for it to happen, but it does have to happen. And so, like Sarah said, I think we need this parallel process. You know, I toyed with the idea of appealing. I agree with my colleagues that it wouldn't, you know, looking at the results from Southern California and the decisions around us in the county, no one else in the county appealed either. We've all sort of come to the same conclusion that these numbers are in front of us. We need to start preparing for it. We also need to point out our concerns about them. We need to say that this is a plan for us to get this allocation in place, but we have serious reservations about parts of it. We need help from the state in terms of resolving these two questions, housing versus fire. With that, I will second this, and I'll, in absentia, I will thank Craig and John for continuing to serve as our subcommittee on this.
Thank you. I agree with my colleagues. I think in the future, there will be laws that come down that say you cannot build in certain areas, like in our town, the Highlands, or in the county part of our town, Los Trancos. Something's got to give on the insurance. As I said, I lost my insurance twice in a year, so I am very empathetic to the residents who are going through the same thing. Our insurance commissioner was extremely supportive of our efforts to help our community, and he's trying to figure this one out. The only way he has leverage is when they come to him for, what was it, Jeremy or Jeff? He only can get them when they come for, when the insurance companies come for.
Well, I
Remember,
don't know the term.
there was something. Yeah. So this is the most important thing we're going to be doing in the next, 5 years, 10 years. So I think this is a fantastic idea. Talk to, get our colleagues talking to HCD, Insurance Commissioner, CAL FIRE, everybody. And with that, Sharon, roll call.
Councilmember Alves,
Yes.
Councilmember Wernicott,
Aye.
Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, colleagues memo. Oh, is this mine? Okay, let me get to it. I have to find it.
Mayor Derwin.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, the hand was lowered. Fine. Well, I'm sorry, now the hand is raised again. Do you want to take comments on the last item since we've moved on, or would you?
Oh, were there more hands?
There's one just went up.
Yeah, sure. Go for it. Go for it.
I got it, Sharon. Or you got it. There you go.
Hi, I'm just, this is Christy, and I'm just not clear on the action item for the insurance. It seems vague to me, and maybe a question of, can some public members get involved that have been affected so we can keep everyone involved, not only subcommittees, but the public as well. And I'm not clear when Commissioner Laura for insurance will be helping us. It's not clear to me.
Mayor Derwin?
Yes, thank you, Jim.
Commissioner Lara is available to help you now. If anyone wants information, we're happy to push that out again related to how to contact the state insurance commissioner. He's actively seeking information about those who've had non-renewals or in some cases cancellations, but it's mostly non-renewals. You can go to his website. We will push that out again. So he is available and his staff to hear those things. The action, there wasn't a particular action item related to the insurance commissioner other than to continue engagement with him and help educate him and his staff on the nexus between insurance, fire, and housing issues that we started with him earlier this year.
Yeah, we'll get that information out because they want to hear from people who are being affected. And there are a lot of people in town even in Ladera, for being effective. Okay, moving on to which item was this? Item number 11, colleagues memo. This was from me. I got an email from, I think it was the mayor of Berkeley's office, asking if Portola Valley could be involved in United Against Hate Week. That is November 14 to 20. We checked it out, Jeremy and I, it's legit. There are a lot of our neighbors who are on the list. And I am bringing it to the council to ask if you can support. I think right now, wasn't I just asking for a proclamation of support, which will come later, and possibly some of these activities, not all, but there was also a fiscal component. And in our mayor's meeting last week, we wondered whether this would be a good item to send to the equity committee to see whether they think it's appropriate to make a donation of some sort. So I'm asking that you approve a proclamation of support for United Against Hate Week, support the efforts, and defer the question of financial support to the equity committee. Questions? All right, are there questions from the audience, the public?
There are no hands raised.
All right, I will bring it back. Is there a motion?
I think this is a great idea. I do want to hear what Equity has to say about the donation, but I support the proclamation definitely. Some of the other auction items on here looked great to me too. So thanks for pursuing this, and I look forward to seeing more. I move to approve.
Second.
I agree, and I second.
Thank you. Sharon, roll call.
Councilmember Alves,
Aye.
Councilmember Wernicott, Mayor Derwin.
Aye. Thank you. It passes. And so you will see more of this later. Council Liaison Committee and Regional Agencies reports. Sarah, would you like to go first?
Sure. I transitioned over to liaison for the Planning Commission this month and attended that most recent meeting, which was about Station 8 and the approval of that. And it was approved 0 to 5, or I guess I should say 5 to 0. And the other bigger meeting that I attended was related to the Ad Hoc Housing Committee and interviewing and refining aspects of the agreement with the consultant that we're going to be working with as part of that process. And I think gave everybody a chance to kind of meet the team that we're going to be working with there. And so that was productive. There was nothing significant, no kind of red flags to report or anything like that on that. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, cable and undergrounding met, and we revisited the plan we pursued years ago of undergrounding power lines. You may recall 8 years ago, we actually started a project to underground about a 1/4 mile of lines using our Measure 20A funds from PG&E. But then PG&E basically sort of doubled the cost of the estimate came back twice as basically much more than we had accumulated at the same time that utility code changed and the 20A accumulations basically stopped. So we are getting almost no further money for undergrounding. We don't have enough to do anything more than a couple hundred yards of wire at this point. The new option is something that Los Altos Hills is pursuing that we are trying to learn more about, which is they've contracted with a series of private consultants on basically the designing of an underground electricity system for Los Altos Hills, and they would be passing a bond measure at some point if they got far enough along the design. I believe they don't think they've passed yet, but they would be moving forward. I mean, they estimated the cost, it was a lot, but it was actually plausible. I mean, it was something that I think I'll say it was ballpark, maybe 50 million to underground everything in Los Altos Hills. If you do that, then PG&E is actually required to pay you approximately half of that. They basically, if you build it to PG&E standards, they're required to buy it back from you for about half of that. And so it was something where it was sort of a net investment of 20 or 30 million paid in bonds over a long, fairly long period of time. I mean, we have our own experience with Paloma Road undergrounded a few years ago. It was expensive, but it was a lot less than what you'd get if you were working directly with PG&E to do all the work on it. So cable undergrounding, sort of running with that. We're going to sort of talk to Los Altos Hills, look at the options. They're going to come back. Eventually, they might come to us to see if we think this is worth exploring. Obviously, there are tremendous benefits to having underground electricity at this point. We're all very sensible to them at this point. So I'm hoping maybe you'll hear something back from us or from Cable Undergrounding in the fall. That was one of my meetings. Hold on, I'm just checking my notes here. Nature and Science met again and are they're cranking out their monthly their seminar webinars again. So they're doing the wildflowers. Dan Quinn is doing his wildflower talks. The earthquake prediction went off fairly smoothly. There was a photo bombing incident, but actually they were able to surprisingly nimbly reconstitute the meeting and move forward. It turned out that the staff was trying to publicize these events more widely, and they put it on Twitter, and apparently that's what drew these Zoom bombers, I'm told. So they've got a couple more planned. Leslie Field's going to do a presentation on ICE 911. I think there's Paul Heupel's going to do a talk about oak galls. They're going to take a little break, I think, over the summer. They've done 5 or 6 of these now. They've done a lot of work on them. They're going to take maybe a month or 2 off, and then think about sort of starting in the fall with maybe even some live events. They were sort of talking about what might go into having sort of something live or something. So they were very excited about that. Sorry, I'm just checking my notes here to see if there's anything else. I actually, unfortunately, had to miss Parks and Rec on Monday, so I don't have an update from that one, but I'll find out what happened from when I get a chance to touch base with John Myers. That's, I believe, what I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff. I'll try to go quickly. I had a CCAG meeting. It started off with a presentation to Sandy Wong, the ED, who is stepping down at the end of this month, and it was just lovely. Rich Napier, who was the previous ED, she came on, I think, in 2012, came, and Assemblyman Mullen and Brian from Jackie Spears' office, and just a lot of people. It was really nicely done. The ledge, there wasn't a big ledge report. Let me see what they said. The governor, here's one thing. The governor still wants to fund high-speed rail in the San Joaquin Valley. So we're going to have to negotiate with him to get any transportation or rails projects funded. That's going to be a little challenging. July 16th, the ledge goes on recess, and then they come back August 17th. And then we did a lot of, we finally, I think, got through Measure M. Measure M is the $10 vehicle registration fee, of which 50% of the proceeds go to the cities. We get some money, and 50% goes to some county programs, which we decided to change the allocations of a bit. But that was finally, the funding agreements we finally approved. And they opened a public hearing on the draft update to congestion management plan use impact analysis program called TDM policy, which had not been updated, since 2007 or something. And what else? And we finally approved the new ED's contract. So Sean Charpentier will be the new ED as of August 1st. There was a very brief Express Lanes meeting where pretty much all we did was approve the biennial update to the Conflict of Interest Code. There was a little report. There's been a little controversial thing happening where the Express Lanes had to borrow money from the TA in order to build the Express Lanes. And they got a really great rate for us. And so they charge something called a credit enhancement fee, which is about $400,000 a year. It will go down as we pay the loan off. And so Diane Pappen came up with the idea that it would be nice if perhaps they thought about putting that credit enhancement fee into our equity program or some sort of equity program. We have a formal equity program. And of course, there's never enough money for equity. And that just made everybody go crazy. So I guess they talked about it at the TA meeting recently, and the Carter Ma, who is, I guess he's the interim director, reported back about the additional suggestions. Apparently there is money somewhere that the TA can donate to this equity fund that would be equal to the credit enhancement fee. And why the heck they just don't use the credit enhancement fee, I have no idea. They thanked Sandy. There were more people thanking her because Sandy is on the executive committee of the Express Lanes. And as I said, she will be stepping down. And the policy manager, they've had a lot of meetings with BADA and BAFA. I love those names, to work through all the implementation challenges, and that was that. The Express Lane, one of the Express Lanes will open in the fall, so we're getting close. And then One Shoreline, Fizzler met, and we approved our fiscal year 21-22 operating budget, flood zones budget, and capital projects budget. We still have money. We haven't run out yet. We have a Stanford Summer Fellow grad student helping, and he's creating an interactive map of land uses along Colma Creek for the local hazard plan, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. What else? And then Don Horsley thinks RCD, that's Resource Conservation District, should come give us a presentation, and I sure agree. Love those people. Then I also the same day had a meeting with the polling people for the idea of putting something on the ballot in probably November 2022, because we need a dedicated funding stream for One Shoreline Fizzler, because we're going to run out of money. And it actually looked promising. Then Equity Committee. This is my favorite. So we had our first meeting on June 29. All the committee members introduced themselves. I'll name them for you. Ali, I don't know how to say his last name, Aalaei, Alea, Kim Marinucci, Pat, I don't know how to say her name either, Bainan, do you know she's on BPTS? Do you know how to say her last name, Jeremy? Okay.
I would butcher it.
Okay.
I'm terrible at last name.
Jonathan Clark, also known as Johnny, he is in high school. Judy Murphy, you all know Judy. Lucy Neely, Andrew Pierce, Gwen Stritter, she lives up Los Trancos, and Karen Vatra, and Kim, Pat, Johnny, Judy, Lucy, and Gwen are part of the core group of people who are on the corner every Sunday. So they nominated and appointed a chair, Kim Marinucci, a vice chair, Johnny Clark, and a secretary, Lucy Neely. And Lucy takes really detailed minutes. So if you want to see what's going on at the meeting, go to the website, our website, and click on the agenda packet, and you can see her meeting notes. So there was just a ton of that. So at that meeting, they started on their the writing of their committee charter, including developing the mission statement. And they started with just throwing ideas out, and then they started refining them. And then they appointed a few people to, I think it was Karen Vatra, I can't remember who the other two were, to go and take all the ideas and bring back a charter, which they did at the second meeting. I just want to tell you some of the things that were discussed, because it is unlike any other committee in town. It is the things they talk about. Some is very tedious. They love to get into language. Some is really, really challenging, but it's a lot of honest, truthful talk. Oh, they wanted to, so here are some of the ideas. Again, I just let them talk, right? They would like to put up some statues around town. They would like to, they want to do speaker series. They want to do, one person thought we could give a piece of land to the people we took it from. They want to participate with other committees where there is intersectionality. I was waiting for that word to come up and it did. I wanted to hear critical race theory, yep, and intersectionality, and those two words came up. And you never hear that in any of our other committees, do you? There was a lot of talk about housing policy by Ali, who's very new to town and doesn't know anything, but as an outsider looking in, had some very interesting thoughts. They taught law enforcement, racial breakdown of the schools in town, renew all the policies and procedures. Johnny is living with his grandparents in Portola Valley. He went to the Woodside Schools Elementary. This year is at Eastside Prep. He is Black. And he talked a lot about how different it was to finally be at a school where almost everybody has, brown or Black skin, as opposed to being the other in Woodside Elementary. Okay, so then the next meeting, they came back and they brought their charter. But first, there was a presentation by the town attorney on the introduction of the Brown Act, and they were really engaged. And there were some tough questions because they have a group called PV Fair where they discuss all sorts of things. I guess it's an online group, right, Cara? PV Fair. And
Yep,
so
it's an online forum.
So there's some issues with the Brown Act, since most of these people are on this committee, correct? And Cara is going to further explore that. So what did they talk about? So they came back with a charter, and they discussed that in great detail. There was a big discussion over the word educate versus inform. There was, let me see, there's some good stuff here. So there were questions like, well, Andrew Pierce is a civil rights attorney. He's done a lot of, he lived in Palo Alto. He's done a lot of this work. His wife, her name is, I wrote her name down, Marjoleine, wrote it down here, and now I can't find it. She's a law professor at Santa Clara, and she wrote a book with some other authors in 1996 about privilege, 1996. So this is the depth of knowledge of these people. It is astounding. Anyway, so you've got Andrew, and then you've got Johnny, and then you've got Lucy Neely, who's just such a fresh little pistol. I just love her. And Lucy, they're talking about, do we want to be political or do we want to engage with the residents? And then Kim wants to have whiteness up front in the charter. And then Andrew says a committee that is about whiteness is going to be dated. Whiteness is more than white. it's more about people in power, people in the prevailing power culture. And in the new census, he thinks are going to be less white because there's a lot more Asian residents. This idea that we have to acknowledge that the town of Portola Valley is an extremely wealthy town, to make it a more honest document, because what was written in the first draft was a little bit in the clouds, a little bit idealistic. And Andrew said, we're really talking about privilege. That's the concept. It's not white, it's not Asian, it's not wealthy, it's just privilege. And then Johnny made a really kind of a heartfelt statement, because they were talking about making people feel welcome. That's what they want to do. They want people to feel welcome. And he said, when has my culture been made to feel welcome in Portola Valley? And I thought of my CCNRs, which did, even though that's been thrown out, I understand that. I do have the document, and it says, you cannot sell to a colored person. And so Gwen said, we need to include the fact that the first peoples were not welcome, and other people who wanted to be part of Portola Valley were not welcome. So what they're going to do is they are going to add Lucy to the subcommittee, and they're going to come back with a second draft. Okay, then they talked about, do they want to have the committee called Equity Committee or Race and Equity? And they were split. 2 people were absent, so they're going to wait and talk about that at the next meeting. Then Karen wanted a couple things on the agenda. One was her idea that the facilities are not rented to non-residents, and she doesn't think that's right. And I tried to explain in a very clumsy way why the policy was the way it was, and discouraged her from pursuing that right now. And then there was a discussion about support for AB 118. That's the Crises Grant Pilot Program bill, which is getting great support, very popular. It's basically the teams of mental health professionals who go in and help vulnerable populations in crises, like maybe someone's having a public health crisis, or somebody's having a mental health crisis, or a unhoused people having a crisis, rather than using the police. And so they supported it and recommended that we supported it, and it will come to us. So the meeting went pretty long, but it was a really good meeting, and I hope you guys get a chance to tune in, because they're impressive and funny and messy and all those things that make you happy that you live in a democratic country. Okay, going on to town manager report, and I'm sorry I wasn't brief.
Thank you, Mayor Derwin and members of the council. So first, I'd like to start with what I think is pretty monumental news on our front, which is that town hall doors have been opened the last 3 days. We're amongst the first cities to fully open our facilities, although they're under a modified arrangement right now. We've been delighted to see approximately 2.5, 3 dozen of the residents that we serve. It seems most people simply saw that the doors were open and came in and asked questions, and there were certainly some other activities related to land use and the like, but simply having all of the staff back in the building again and seeing each other and interacting in the ways that we've missed the last 15, 16 months has been just absolutely wonderful. Thank you to the support of the council and particularly Jeff and John, who were part of all of these conversations to make this happen as soon as it did. I don't know if folks saw it, but one of the Alpine Alpine Little League teams went pretty far in their championship games, but did lose to San Mateo. Having talked to Todd Scheuer, who works with the Alpine teams, we are planning at some point to have those kids who have come out to a council meeting in the future. We thought that would be a lot of fun. We want to wait till we're able to do that in person instead of having I think they're 9-year-olds, 16 9-year-olds on a Zoom call. That's probably not particularly fair of us. So we'll be trying to do that at some point in September when we think things will be in a different place. I was really happy to see Jonathan here tonight just to listen to our the way that our meetings go. As this council knows, There was two staff reports on the West Bay Sanitary District's agenda a few weeks back related to annexation of the town and changes in reimbursements. We've asked members of their team to attend our August 11th meeting for a report on that. Unfortunately, I don't believe the general manager can attend because they have their meetings at the same time that the council has yours. So we'll have other members of the team. I hope everyone did see that there was an apprehension for the alleged jewel thief in town. Very great work from the detectives and the sheriff's deputies who worked on that. The farmers market, if you have not been out the last couple months, is an absolute delight. Every week it seems we have new vendors and new experiences. So to Niall and his team, thank you. I hope you go out tomorrow. So there's a couple new vendors tomorrow as well. It may not have been noticed in the consent item on the housing element consultant, but that consultant that the council did approve the contract for also made a bid for our safety element. That was one of the alternates that was an opportunity within the RFQ. We do plan to bring that forward to the council next month, and just to correct some information that I think was floating out earlier, that those processes will run fairly concurrently and inform one another. So we're delighted to share that. So if this is obviously whether or not the council does approve that contract when we bring next month. The final thing I have, just in the vein of fun news to share, I saw an absolutely extraordinary video shot in the nighttime at some point in late June in town near Bull, I think it's Bull Run, right near the Il Mirador property, of a badger. I had no idea that there were badgers in town, let alone getting captured on cameras. I was very pleased that this individual shared that video with me. I shared it with the council. Just another fun thing that you learn on the job sometimes. So with that, turn it back to you, Mayor Derwin. Thank you.
We've got the badger video and we've got Craig's beaver.
Oh, Portland, yes.
The aging beaver in the fountain. I mean, the water feature. Okay, enough about beavers and badgers. Town Council Weekly Digest, Thursday, June 24. Is there anything you would like to discuss? All right, let's go to the next one. Town Council Digest, July 1. No? Okay. It's really, yeah, when are we going to be in person? Cara and Jeremy? October?
Well, it's still a bit of a TBD date. I'm sorry, I should have said that in my report. My apologies. The what we've been operating under is the presumption that the residents will want to continue a hybrid model, but unfortunately, our we have no capabilities whatsoever related to having such a system set up in the schoolhouse, let alone also the community hall, because we, have some larger meetings there on issues that are of that note. So we are working with a vendor that actually is doing some work in another community. They're testing that equipment this week to see that it all works. And our hope is that if it does work and it looks good, that we can move very quickly on installing that. So I'd hate to throw out a date and then have that slip in some fashion, but I would say the next few months we'll get back to that. We simply didn't want to start having meetings in person without any opportunity for people to continue to participate, let alone even see it. We figured that there would be some concern around that. So right now meetings continue to be held virtually.
But if the governor rescinds whatever that thing is, don't we have to meet in public?
Yep, that might happen. I don't know if, Cara, if you've heard anything additionally in the last couple of days.
Yeah, the order suspending the Brown Act requirements expires, I believe it's September 20th. And there is some discussion about extending that order. And I haven't heard anything about that in the last few days, but that's the general time frame. And at that point,
Does that apply to everybody, not just the council?
correct.
Okay, so committees, commissions, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Although, as Jeremy mentioned, we hope to have some kind of hybrid remote system set up by then.
Okay, thank you. So is there anything on the July 8 digest that you would like to pull? Does anyone wish to go to the Millbrae Council of Cities dinner on July 23 in person? I'm thinking of going. Is
Do you know
anyone-
what's, do you know what the agenda, or do you know what's
I
about?
think it's being held at, well, it's in the packet. I think it's being held at, whatever they call the multimodal station.
Yeah,
Bart-
oh, right.
Get some walking tour around there. And then does anyone want to go to the League of California Cities? Where is it? I didn't look. Where is it, Jeremy? Sacramento. Oh, not too bad. There's another fabulous opportunity. Okay. With that.
I'll think about it.
Got it? Okay. Well, somebody should go to Progress. I can't go because I'm going to be in Morocco. But that is somebody should definitely do that. Jeremy
When is
left
it?
Progress. Isn't it October? It's October.
Yeah, they've set it up for, it's typically in April, but I think it's coming up in October.
That's one of Jeremy's.
Yeah. Well,
It's a
mine got
fantastic-
canceled. Yeah.
Yeah,
They canceled, a couple times.
wonderful networking event for elected.
Somebody should go. Somebody from the town should go.
I think most anybody, I don't know that they restrict it necessarily to, I don't recall the rules, but there's a wide variety of people who come to that event.
Everybody's there in politics in the county. Everybody. It is the Politico event of the year. The League of California Cities is an interesting one because you see people from all over the state. So the rural counties in San Francisco and LA. Okay. I feel like I have to take a vow of silence because I've talked too much. So with that, we will adjourn. Good night.
Good night.
Night, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.